What up, y'all? It's your boy, One Sir Grove. This is the 97th episode of C4CW, Casting 495, Celebrities Worldwide. And this is a continuation from the 96th episode where I talked about higher education. This is going to be a condensed podcast. In other words, it's going to be shorter than the previous podcast. I just wanted to follow up because, by the way, thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in for the first time, thanks for tuning in. If you've tuned in before, hey man, thanks for coming back. I hope that you're having a pleasant day, night, evening, midday, midnight, dawn, dusk, wherever you are in the world. And I am your boy. I am your host, One Sir Grove. I wanted to point out that in the previous podcast, there's a couple of redactions. Well, a couple of changes that I want to make. One thing I have to add to what I was beginning to say, just because I wanted to keep it under an hour, and this is only going to be like a few minutes. But what I had said at the beginning of the podcast, when I listened to it after I recorded it, I was started to talk about the woman who I had met when I, some like 12, 13, going on 15 years ago, when I had been back in the DC area before I was out here running this operation in New York. I had met a woman who, she had already had her master's degree from George Washington University. And what she told me back then, I can't remember exactly which agency I was at the time being paid as a defense contractor, because I was at several. But that year that I had just briefly interacted with her, and I mean, I could figure it out. I know which agency and agencies it was. I'm just saying that for effect. But she told me that she had taken a course at George Washington University, and that the course had cost her $30,000 to $35,000 for one course. Now you're probably like, that's bullshit, dude. There's no such thing. Well, here's what it was, man. So let's go with the low estimate, and let's say it was 30. Because I did ask her, I was like, you mean the number after 2, like 3? And she's like, no, 35 or 30,000, right? So assuming that she said, considering hypothetically that she said 30 instead of 35, because it was one of the two, again, going with the lower estimate, she told me that the nature of the course was such that she was working for a company, and some very high level company. I can't remember which company it was, but it was some like big consulting company or something like that. And in order to be part of the club in her industry, her bosses or her boss or whoever it is, someone said to her, hey, listen, so to be on the next level of this game, we require or ask that you take this course. And she's like, oh, for real? And they're like, yeah, that's how we do it. You take this like business whatever course through George Washington University, and yeah, that's how you get into the next level. That's how you reach the next level within this club that you're part of. So she fucking paid for, and she was specific about it. She was like, I paid for one fucking course just to get a certificate. Or it was like a couple or a few but it was like one fucking thing, right? It was like one course thing that she took. $30,000. She said it did really nothing to enhance her overall education because she's already at the master's level. I mean, she learned something, but basically she was paying for a certificate because within her industry, if you have this one $30,000 certificate, it means that you're like even more of the shit. Like you're better now. Like you're higher up on the food chain. Which, whatever, man. I mean, that's that business model, and it works for some people, but I mean, I'm like, come on, dude, that seems a bit, I mean, she was saying it like it's not that she regretted it, because she was like, look, she's like, I'm going to be honest, in my industry, I make a lot of money, and $30,000 isn't really shit. It's like going out to dinner money at a super fine restaurant, right? And, or, like buying some jewels or something just to go to a ball. Like, it ain't shit to her. And, but having to take the class, it was just like time consuming. And she kind of like, she kind of suggested that, I mean, and even said directly, she didn't just imply it. She was like, look, man, George Washington's an awesome school. And if I'm not mistaken, she already had her master's through George Washington. It was like Georgetown or George Washington. She already had a master's from like a top school. And it may have actually been George Washington University. So this additional certification, she didn't really fucking need it to like enhance or enrich her knowledge base. She's just kind of like, the class was like, whatever. She's like, I pretty fucking much already knew this shit. But to get certified in it, you gotta pay the piper. So she paid for it. The other thing I wanted to tell you, and she just kind of then laughed, like, it was fucking whatever. Then the other thing that I wanted to mention is when I was talking about the Mandela effect and I was talking about Niger and how now the media is saying Niger. That growing up, like, and throughout, like, learning and, like, the world, like, nobody had ever said Niger, ever. But now it's a big thing where it's not Niger anymore. There are no instances of Niger. And some have conjectured that the Mandela effect, what it did was it's the collision of two different universes. So it's the overlapping of two different universes. And that's why half the population remembers one thing and the other half remembers the other, because we're all from different universes. Technically, half the population is from a different universe than the other population. That may sound strange and weird and silly and far-fetched. As outrageous as it may sound, it's probably the case. And we can prove it mathematically, whether you accept it or not. It's already pretty much been proven. So in that, one of the things that I had said incorrectly in regard to Niger is that I started to talk about Niger. I know what it was. So I started to talk about Niger, and I said Nigeria. I meant to say Niger, but I said Nigeria. I didn't mean to say Nigeria. I said that mistakenly and incorrectly, and when I went back and I listened to the audio, I was like, oh, okay. I meant to lead up to Niger by saying Niger. I did ultimately, I believe, say Niger in relation to the pronunciation Niger, but before I did that, I had said Nigeria, which Nigeria is not the same as Niger. I meant Niger being the country Niger, as we have always called it, but apparently here on this timeline, reality world line, it's Niger, and that's the big thing that people talk about. And I'm saying to you, dude, as a college honor student and as someone who was tested for different high IQ gifted programs, and as much media as I've seen in my lifetime, watching fucking everything on TV just about that, I mean, come on, dude. Come on, man. In almost a half a century, it's always been Niger. It's always been Nigeria. It's always been daylight savings time. There is no such thing as daylight saving time. There is no such thing as fucking Niger. Those are instances of the Mandela effect. The bubble spaces, the bubble universes in which we live, overlapping, colliding, combining, coalescing, gelling, becoming one or more, multiverse, other universe. It doesn't mean to say that there are only two that have collided, that have come together. There may be more than two here. There could be fucking 2 zillion. Who fucking knows? But in terms of divergence, less than 2% divergence change. What is it? Offset temporal divergence, displacement, time displacement. So so I wanted to point that out. And this has been episode 97 of Casting 495 Celebrities Worldwide. I am your boy, One Sir Grove. Word up.